All right, so now that we know more about turkeys, gender, age, subspecies, things like that, a little bit about the actual physical abilities and senses of turkeys is really important when it comes to turkey hunting.
Yeah, so have you ever heard people say, oh, turkeys are dumb? Well, there's many circumstances where they might appear dumb, or you hear somebody say that because they live in a city and they got turkeys in their backyard and they're like, oh yeah, them things are stupid.
Yeah.
Okay? But when you're out there hunting, and the more you hunt them and learn, they have their days where they're really smart.
And their days where they're really stupid too.
Absolutely.
But, overall, those birds want to stay alive, and they've got a lot of good ways to do that. And probably the absolute #1 best defense sense that they have is their eyesight.
Their eyesight, yep.
One of the stories that I'd mentioned in the previous lesson had to do with the birds that came over that hill and came to a stop, and I was trying to identify whether they were, toms, whether they had beards, if I could shoot them or not. And I'll tell you what, I sat there with that gun staring down the barrel right at those two birds saying, come on, show me a beard, show me a beard. And finally, one of them didn't show me a beard, but he went into full strut. And instantly I was like, cool. That's a tom. I know he's a tom because he's in full strut.
Right.
Keep in mind I'd only been turkey hunting for 2 years at this point. So I'm sitting here looking down the beads of the gun right at the bird on the left. The one on the right, who's about 5 feet away from the other bird, goes into full strut. And I said, oh, I got you. All I got to do is move the gun like this, and then I'll shoot. I got about half of that distance, and they were both running full speed, gone. I mean, blew it. And that's because of their eyesight.
Yeah. So don't hold me to this, because this is one of the rumors that I heard as a kid in the barbershop growing up. But apparently back then there was a study done that said that a turkey could actually see a human eye blink up to 80 yards.
Really?
Yeah.
So they are smart.
It's incredible.
So when it comes to beating that sense, basically you need to know when to move or hunt out of a blind and, cover yourself up. Good camo. There's a lot of different things that we'll cover in upcoming modules that will get you around that eyesight, but it is important to know that if you make the slightest move at the wrong time, game over. So what other senses do we have to work with?
Well, one of the things that a lot of people take for granted is their ability to hear. They can actually hear really well. And so if you think about it, we're going to go into calling and communicating and stuff like that, but birds communicate back and forth all the time within each other, within the group, and determining different things. But with that being said, they need to be able to hear you calling to them, trying to bring them in. But keep that in mind when you're moving around the woods or you're changing up your strategy, like Marty said, we're going to get into later. But keep that in mind that they can hear really well. Yeah,
they're extremely cautious, and if the sounds that they're hearing don't feel right to them, they're going to boogie out of the area. Now, one other thing that a lot of hunters are always thinking about is scent. With deer hunting, that's a huge thing, is scent control, or scent attractants and things like that. When it comes to turkeys, don't even worry about it.
Good thing, because we'd be in trouble if they could smell good. Having those other great senses, it'd be even tougher.
Yeah, they don't pay any attention to it at all. So your main things that you have to worry about is sight, #1 for sure, and then hearing.
Yeah.
Now, you'd referenced earlier that sometimes they seem like they're geniuses, and other times they seem like they don't have a clue what's going on. I've had moments where I've went into the edge of a field and looked out and saw turkeys out in the field, and they went back into the woods. I ran out and put out a pop-up blind about 50 yards from the nearest tree, set out some decoys, jumped inside, hit the call once, and they came back out and hit that field that they had just been standing in, and walked all the way over, straight to within 10 yards of the decoys, to a blind that wasn't there 15 minutes earlier. So that's one of those moments that you're like, that brain this big is kind of acting like
that reminds me of a similar story where Marty and I are hunting together in Kansas, and we're sitting in actually 2 little pop-up blinds that we're going to show you guys here in a little bit too. And we're probably 300 or 400 yards away from our rental car. And unlike deer and other animals and things like that, like Marty said, they don't care a lot of times when it comes to that kind of stuff. We would have been better off sitting in the rental car that day because they walked right by it. So
strutted right around it.
Yeah, they're a totally different beast for sure.
Yep. And then there's other times where every move you make, you swear that tom has you figured out and pegged and stuff. And that's part of the fun of it, is the strategy. Yeah. So the main thing when it comes to their senses is #1 for sure, their sight, You got to pay really close attention
Yeah.
to that. That's one of the number one ways that you lose a chance on a bird. Number two, the hearing. Other than that, it's just a matter of trying to outsmart them. And we've got all kinds of strategies that we'll cover in the future on how to get that bird within gun range and be able to get that shot without scaring them off.